For this portion of the mini lesson, you will actually need a partner, and ideally this is a person in our math class, but you could do this potentially with a parent or a sibling, but they will need to have a little bit of awareness of some coordinate grids. So maybe like your 3-year-old sibling is probably not your best choice as a partner. So start with somebody ideally in our math class, but even if they're not in this unit, they could still help you do this. So the first thing I want you to do in this portion of the lesson is you're going to match, eventually you're going to match tables with graphs. But the first thing I want you to start by doing is just by looking at the graphs, and you should have 10 of them. You can come see me directly and I'll give you this packet. You should have 10 different graphs, and they all look slightly different. And I want you just to make some close observations about what do you notice about these graphs. And then you're going to categorize them, and you get to choose how you want to categorize these graphs. And so maybe you think about, looking at how this line looks, maybe where it crosses the origin, this 0, 0 line, or if it does. Maybe you look at like the gaps between the data sets. So like if I notice in here, you can categorize them any way you want, but you would what I'd like you to do is sort of physically sort them. And then you're going to write down in your notebook how you chose to categorize them. Then what I'd like you to do, and let's say I decided that these 3 and these ones and these ones all share some feature in common. I'm going to write down how I chose to categorize them and label it in my notebook. Like I think F and H and J go together, and here's why I think that. Then I'd like you to compare your categorization with your partner. And so if you have really clear notes in your notebook, then you can say, well, I put A and B together, and here's why. And there's no wrong way to do this. There's a couple different ways you might choose about categorizing them. But the real goal of that portion of the lesson is for you to really have a conversation, to think critically about why do I think this graph goes with this one or is in a similar category. So again, there's no right or wrong categorization. It's just having that discussion with another human being about why you chose to make that. So thing 1, categorize by yourself independently. Write down why you chose those categories. And then thing 2, find your partner and share your categorization strategies and your reasonings. Once you've done that, then you're going to take all the graphs, and your next goal is to partner them up and figure out which of these letters, graphs A through J, go with these data sets 1 through 10. And so as you're getting through this, you might find there's some places where it feels sticky or you're not sure what to do. And so one way you can help identify that for yourself is find key pieces of data. So if I look on this table right here, it says when X is 1, Y is 10. And so if I look here, well, oh yeah, X does equal 1, but at the same time, the corresponding Y value, is 8. So I know that 1 and A can't go together because this data point does not correspond to this data point. You could also think about it on the flip side. I could think about, okay, this point right here looks like I could plot that as 6, 18. And so if I look on my data point, I should find that row here. It should say 6, 18. So that you can kind of go from graph to table or table to graph, but the idea is to be able to match them up. So let's say I've established that like A and 2 go together. I can match them up and then explain to my partner, like these 2 go together and here's why I think they go together. And then as you're listening to your partner, be really thoughtful about what they're saying and their reasoning. And so if they think, okay, I think B and 3 go together, be really clear about what are they saying and why their reasoning supports their thinking. One thing I do want you to notice is that while all of these graphs, I think, that might not be true. I was initially going to say that all these graphs follow a line. That may or may not be true. But one thing that's important about proportional relationships in particular is I'll compare these 2 graphs just for a second. They follow a similar line-ish, but I notice here this line does not cross the origin at 0, 0. It would cross at 0, 6. Whereas this line, if I were to follow it through, and I can even use a like makeshift ruler right here, and just, oh yeah, it would cross right there at 0, 0. So all proportional relationships will cross through the origin at 0, 0. So an interesting thing, and we'll look at this in future modules, our module on linear relationships, all linear relationships follow this line, but all proportional relationships go through this line 0, 0. And so we'll talk about more about linear relationships down the road, but the important part for you to identify here is that all proportional relationships must go through 0, 0. Okay, so again, in review, your goal for this portion of the mini lesson is to, 1, compare graphs and make categorizations, then talk to your partner about why you put different graphs in each category, and then you are going to match up graphs with data table, explain your reasoning as to why certain matches go together with your partner, and be ready to critique their reasoning as well.